And we are celebrating. We are celebrating the 30th anniversary of the single market, a big thing for us in Europe. And we have an exceptional personality to talk to us and moderate the next session. We have Enrico Letta, former Prime Minister of Italy and current president of the Jacques Delors Institute. He has been tasked with drafting the EU upcoming report on the future of the single market. This is only 20 years after the report was made by Mr. Mario Monti. He will be joined on stage by three colleagues who will be discussing this topic, and we are going to introduce them shortly. Mr. Vladimir Dluhy, President of Eurochambers, Han Bregendal-Piel, coordinator of the Danish EEN Consortium, and Bianca Dragomir, Director of Cleantech for Iberia. Welcome to all of you. Come and join me on stage, and thank you very much, Mr. Letta, for chairing and presenting your guests. Bienvenidos.
Hello.
Buenas tardes.
Thank you so much, and welcome again here. It's a great opportunity for all of us to be here and to try to talk a little bit about the single market, today's single market, and the future of the single market. And for me also, it's a great opportunity to share some ideas, but also to listen, because then I have to write. And I have to write, but listening and hearings and discussing, debating very concrete experiences will be for me one of the most important part of my mission, of my job in preparing this report. And I'm very proud that the previous report was in the hands of Mario Monti in 2010. The previous report was in the hands of Jacques Delors in the 90s. So we have this fantastic panel, and this panel will give us an overview on problems and perspectives on the single market in a very concrete terms. I think you are here coming from different experiences, in terms of countries, because we have Denmark, Czech Republic, and the European perspective, Spain, and the possibility also to analyze the different obstacles that the single market has had. So I would like to ask to our friends to start our conversation. We will try to have two parts of the conversation. First part, I will ask them to be with us very, very concrete and very frank in explaining us the obstacles, the problems, because we were celebrating the 30th anniversary of the single market. That is great. Single market, 30th anniversary, we are close to a new enlargement, and it is clear that the single market is one of the most important accomplishment of the European integration. Great successes, many achievements, but we know very well that there are plenty of topics where the single market exists just in theory, not in the reality. And we are many fields where there are some problems in the national enforcement, in the European regulation, or even in the fact that in the last years we had some external threats coming from abroad, and these external threats obliged us to think to the single market in a different way. Not only single market in an inward-looking mood, but single market in the relationship with the rest of the world. So a geostrategic dimension of the single market, the relationship with topics that weren't part of the communitarian competences. Of course, the first and very simple example is with healthcare, vaccines, and so on, that weren't part of the European competences. But I would like to start with you, Bianca Dragomir, because your experience can be for us very interesting in understanding how do you see the single market today, the obstacles, the difficulties, the problems coming exactly from your experience.
Thank you very much. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here today, talking about single market, such a topic of utmost importance today. Especially, I'm working on the clean tech sector, so especially when we speak about the green transition and the clean tech deployment, the single market in Europe is key. To me, the single market is the beating heart of the European Union. From a personal perspective, from a business perspective. I was born in Romania. At the first time I went to school, the first map, the world map that I saw was composed by just a few countries. It was kind of in the Eastern Bloc. Now I live and work and create value in a place that didn't even exist at that time in my mind map. And I'm helping businesses at the technology frontier to thrive in the single market. And so certainly the single market is fundamental and it's crucial for our prosperity. But also, I think the single market is still not cohesive enough at the moment for us to thrive in terms of competitiveness as we could. Let's think about what's actually the weak spot of the single market, which is speed, scale, and simplicity. That is the sweet spot of the US, as we've recently seen with the IRA. Speed, well, US put $369 billion on the table that have had already a leverage of 1 trillion. And already after 1 year, there's been 100,000 more green jobs in the market. If we look at simplicity, with investors go there and only with a spreadsheet, they can see the return on investment over the next 10 years in clean tech. Whereas in Europe, we're still struggling. We have the STEP platform recently, the one-stop shop for promoters in clean tech, but these still need to be matched with cohesion funds, and that's quite a complex process. And at the time of investment, an investor mindset is kind of surprised by that. This is from dialogues that I'm having on my daily basis with investors in this sector. And that of course affects the speed that we need in terms of having that lead in global competitiveness in Europe. I mean, just another story is that, for example, in Spain, and I live this on my own skin, working with SMEs in the energy sector, if you go to one region, you can have an average of 2 months to accelerate your PV, just business as usual, PV installation to market. But on the region next door, you can have after 2 years of time. So imagine this happens in Spain, within 2 regions that are just next one to another. Now, if you look at the European market, then the painting has even more colors and more shapes. So I believe that a single market should make Europe a strategic place to invest and a strategic place to innovate, the go-to place for innovators and for investors. And for that, we need to harmonize that, and we need to pan-European EU regulatory framework. And we've shown with COVID that we can do that with the procurement of vaccines. Why can't we do this in clean tech or in the energy transition so important at this stage?
Thank you, Bianca. I would like to ask to Vladimir. Vladimir, your experience is both an experience of someone who was in government in a very special period, someone who is an economist, so you have an overview of the situation from the economist point of view. And of course, today you are the president of Eurochambers. I think you can answer the question about the obstacles and the problems of the single market, about where is the bar today with all these capacities. So you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. First of all, I'm very pleased to be at this panel and to be able to talk to you. Yes, indeed, allow me to start very shortly with my personal experience, not as a president of Eurochamber, but as a Czech economist who was suddenly, during the so-called Velvet Revolution, parachuted from obscure institute of research in economics to become the Deputy Prime Minister of Czechoslovakia and Minister of Economy. And after the split, I was another 5 years Minister of Economy of the Czech Republic. I was not part of the government during the period when we entered EU, but of course I was part of the preparatory works, and then as an economist I followed very much the situation. And if you look at not only Czech Republic, even later countries like Romania, Bulgaria, or countries in Central Europe, probably the best period in terms of catching up the economic standard of living, economic development level, be it measured by GDP per capita or whatever, was the catching up period between, let's say, 1999 till the start of the Great Recession in 2008. That was a period when he really closed the gap with the so-called old Europe average most quickly. And if I should name one particular factor, according to my opinion, it was a single market. Opening the flow of the goods, of course, much less services, of course, a lot of discussion about opening the exchange of labor. You remember that after 2004, when we entered, there were many countries which closed the border in terms of the labor for a couple of months or even years. But for me, the single market was the most important factor for very strong growth, increase of competitiveness of our companies, and indeed building up the basis for today position of Central and Southeastern Europe. We could have made many things differently and probably better in our transition. But today, our countries are a standard member of the EU, with macroeconomic parameters many times much better than many West European countries, and we are just one of you. And the single market was one of the most important factors. Second, here, Enrico, if I can, I will raise the point which you have already mentioned. If we are speaking about lacking in competitiveness or also in growth of Europe as a whole towards both United States, China, in the future India, Southeast Asia. Just remember, in 2008, Europe, including UK, was slightly bigger in absolute terms of GDP produced than the US. 14 years, last year in 2022, it was only 2/3. We are lacking in competitiveness. And again, if I take my experience from our transition period, deepening, improving the function of single market will become, if we want to change the trend and we would like to increase our competitiveness, deepening and improving and making more efficient single market will be one of the paramount conditions for catching up again with the most progressive parts of the world. And the three, if I may, very shortly, what I see, and here I put my hat of Eurochamber on, what I see the biggest obstacle, or one of the biggest obstacles, and maybe there will be time to develop a little bit later, it's the overregulation. And the regulations which are stemming from different European policies. I'm going to mention the Green Deal, and please do understand me well. I'm not against the Green Deal policies, but they, on the top of all other regulations, create many new obstacles, subsidies, as a matter of fact, distorting the single market. So that's something which probably the new Commission, which should call for some stop for 1-2 months, reconsider, and having in mind that single market is very important for our future growth. So these 3 points to begin with.
Thank you, Vladimir. We move to Denmark. So your experience, Scandinavian countries are from the beginning of the single market at the very top of the push and of the implementation, always thinking that the single market was the core of the European integration, and it is so important, the enforcement and correct enforcement. So you are there, and you have the possibility to tell us from your point of view which are the obstacles and the problems, or where you see today the main obstacles to the completion of the single market.
Yes, thank you, Enrique. I'm here today representing very much the small and medium-sized enterprises. I work as the coordinator of the Enterprise Europe Network, which is the business support network for small and medium-sized enterprises. We live in an area where more than 90% of our companies are small and medium-sized enterprises, and to be honest, as Bianca and I were just discussing over lunch, it's actually a very lonely place to be an SME because it's a big jungle. The single market is a huge jungle for the SMEs. There is a clear perception that the legislation in regards to SMEs is lagging behind the big decisions. And one of the concrete examples is, for instance, with the CO2 quotas that have now been imposed on large companies. They drizzle down for all the subcontractors, and they don't know how to handle it because as it is right now, there is no legislation on how they need to implement this in practice. And I think this is one of the main issues with the single market is that we implement legislation before the details are in place. And for instance, a really good example is within the transport sector. We've been working quite a lot with companies who are a bit baffled about how to handle this CO2 emissions, especially when they do business across borders and utilizes the single market. Then is it the client receiving the order in the end? Is it the client sending the order? Who is actually the company who needs to bear the brunt of the extra cost for the CO2 quotas? It's simple questions like that comes up all the time for SMEs, where the legislation is still not in place. So it's very, very important looking forward that when we implement legislation in the single market, that the SME voice is also heard, because they're the ones who have to implement it in real day, in real life. Yes, another issue is also, well, just the awareness of the single market. I think in everyday life of a small and medium-sized enterprise, the single market doesn't really have a function as such. Usually, if you're a small and medium-sized enterprise, you might have a cooperation partner in the other end of the city. If it's extreme, then maybe in another region. The idea of actually going abroad to do business is still, for a lot of SMEs in Europe, very, very foreign concept. So also one of the things that we need to look into is how do we make businesses more aware of the possibilities of the single market? How do you exploit this? Even if you are a small company, for instance, we've worked with a company in my region that's a very small company, they barely speak English, but he had an idea that maybe if he imported some of his elements from Eastern Europe, that would help his product. And this is one of the companies we've helped with Enterprise Europe Network, where we have utilized the single market with our colleagues in Eastern Europe particularly to actually find the right matches. And this is one of the things that we really need to focus a lot more on in the single market, is how do we build the bridges between the SMEs, because they don't happen by chance and they don't happen by themselves. They need help. Otherwise, Europe is a very, very lonely place for the SMEs.
We heard some of these experiences, and I have to say that in my first 15 days, in my period of hearings, attending meetings, listening, going around Europe to try to have inspiration for this report on the future of the single market, I'm having the possibility to listen many of these problems or the description of the obstacles, of course, aside with also the big successes and the most important part, which is the cooperation and the work together. But I think it is important today to underline some of these obstacles and the problem on how to complete the single market in many issues in many fields where a lot of to do. And I have to mention also that I have a feeling about the single market. The feeling is that we have to be very much cautious and aware of the fact that single market is not just a business of the past. Single market is the future. I say future for a very simple reason. I have the feeling sometimes that when we talk about the single market, we are talking about something that, okay, yes, we have to complete it, but something that was launched in the past, the energy came from the past, and without the consideration that the single market is still the core of our daily life, but will be the core of the success or the unsuccess of the European economy in relationship with what is happening at world level. And the fact that we have to try to think that single market means future is maybe the second part of our conversation, where I would like to ask you, of course, coming from your experiences in terms of different fields, but also in terms of different parts of our Europe, and also with the different approaches, SMEs, trade, big companies, services. We know very well that single market for the future means some important reforms. Reforms means how to get some rules that we announced and that now they have to be definitely approved and implemented on some of the topics. Of course, the most important one is the Capital Markets Union, where there are plenty of rules, but the need to finally approve them and to enforce them is decisive, because without an European strong financial system, it will be impossible to be really competitive. But at the same time, there are many other issues related to the most important accomplishment of this legislature, that it is quite at the end. And I think this legislature will be in the history books as the legislature of the green and digital transition. And the European Union, the European Commission, the European member states were great, I think, in having the possibility to focus on one big issue, the twin transition, and to try to mobilize energies, financial support, and to go in the same direction. But now, I think we have to think, what does it mean for the future, next legislature? If we think for the next 5 years, where do you think we have to put the bar of the single market? And if I may say, if you can spend also 1 minute when we talk about the future of the European Union, one of the main issues, as I told before, is the enlargement. The enlargement, you mentioned, Vladimir, your experience as the one who was in charge to prepare the biggest enlargement of the European Union concerning your country, Czech Republic and Czechoslovakia before. But of course, next enlargement will be a big challenge, is a duty, and the single market will be part of this challenge. So, Bianca, what is your feeling about it?
Well, I think certainly enlargement brings a lot of opportunity as it did in the past, but enlargement means also opening the space of opportunity and more speed. And when there's speed and scale, there's always friction. So we need to be very careful how to orchestrate that journey. In parallel, I think we need to still orchestrate the journey that, what we have on the table at the moment, which is also a lot. So if I have to think of, if I think of the future of the single market, I think that number one, element that needs to be considered is creating Europe that is business friendly. And based on my experience over the last 12 years working with SMEs, with innovators, with investors, still there's work there. I think that Europe needs to trust or give the feeling towards the business that it trusts business. And we need policies that basically, we need to lead this journey with the carrot rather than with the stick. Business and innovators in Europe have the feeling that it's like they are kind of fighting a big monster every time they need to access multiple pots of funding for their innovation to scale up. It's a patchy regulatory framework there as well, and I think that needs to be orchestrated. And at the same time, I see this is the pain point, but I also see that the single market brings so much strength in terms of the regions that we have. More than 280 regions, more than 3,000 industrial clusters across Europe. 20% of the jobs in Europe are in these clusters. If we think at the European clusters, SMEs within clusters, they create more jobs and more innovation to market. And if we take a helicopter view, Europe only produces 30% of the scientific papers, but only 7% of the products that arrive to market. So we are good in early stage innovation, but we need to scale up. I think that will make Europe stronger and a single market stronger. So I think that business friendly is number one. Of course, strategic autonomy at the same time, and that's very much connected to the green and digital transition. And I think simplification is paramount in this journey if we want to thrive. Also, as we go onwards in the enlargement phase, that certainly will give us strength. But Europe already has the biggest internal market in the world, right? We have the most ambitious renewable energy targets. So we need to put together all these strengths and coordinate and orchestrate this change all together based on our strong points.
Thank you, Bianca. Vladimir, the organization you chair, Eurochambers, is protagonist of this debate. So what is your feeling about the future of the single market?
Well, and let me address it from the point of view you also mentioned, this is the enlargement. When I spoke about the positive effect of single market for our region where we became to be part of the single market, I didn't mention that it was, as a matter of fact, win-win situation. Even for the whole plethora of the West European companies, financial institutions, banks, etc., even to the extent that today there is an outflow of the dividend on the level of some 5 to 7% Czech GDP every year. During the pandemics, it was slightly different, so it creates sometimes problems. Not so different from your government trying to put a special levy on the banks. But it was a win-win situation also for the West European companies. By the same token, the enlargement, and now quite a big enlargement which is in the making, will be positive not only for those countries which will enter single market, but will or must be very positive for us. It must be, again, a win-win situation. And here there are two elephants in the room. Let me tackle them. One is Turkey, and I will not discuss Turkey because that's a question mark. But the other elephant in the room is called Ukraine. And again, please, I want to be well understood. I traveled with our CEO, Ben Butters, who is sitting over there, to Kyiv in July. We are supporting as much as we can Ukrainian chambers. I spoke to two deputy prime ministers, God knows how many ministers. We really would like to help Ukraine. But if we include Ukraine as a very important market of more than 40 million people, which is very important in farming, but which also had, even from the old Soviet times, quite a few parts of the industry that is very, very developed. But at the same, the country which, let's be frank, I admire the tenacity, the courage, how they fight. But let's be frank, this was a country where the regulative and legal framework, level of corruption, etc., was not on the easiest levels. So if we are speaking of enlargement, and now let me generalize even beyond Ukraine, we had to do our homeworks in 90s and beginning of after 2000 to be able to be an effective part of the single market, and the same should be required also on those who will come. And then, even from the point of view of Eurochamber, I would see it as a huge chance, because it will not be only Ukraine, it will be Western Balkans, it might be Moldova. We see a sea of political change now in two countries, in Armenia and in Georgia, who seem to be really getting away from the Russian influence and also trying to be part of European development. So this could indeed open huge possibilities, but the conditions I have shortly mentioned must be fulfilled.
Thank you, Vladimir. Hanne, your final thoughts about the future. When we talk about the single market, our mind goes immediately to big companies, because big companies are the companies with the resources, strength, capacity to go everywhere in Europe. That is not the case always for SMEs. And we have the feeling that sometimes SMEs are, I would say, threatened by the single market perspective. To say single market more as a threat, with other companies coming to their own territory and not as an opportunity. How is it possible for the future to try to underline this part of opportunity of the single market for SMEs?
Well, actually, to echo one of the things that was said when Bianca had the voice, is that when we are talking about investments, what we often experience is that the big ideas, the innovative ideas, the spin-outs from the university, the ones that we have a vision of becoming unicorns in Europe, they never become unicorns in Europe because they only have the little upscale and then they are bought. And they get better business offers, let's say, for the States, from investors over there, where the business opportunities, the environment, the business environment is more interesting and more supportive than what we have in the EU at the moment. And it's everything from patent rights to support systems to investment opportunities that are lacking behind in the EU. So we really need, in the future of the single market, we really need to both make it more simple in terms of patent control and rights, but also intensify investments in small and medium-sized enterprises. Again, we are a region of very, very different business environments, and even also often from region to region. I think this is where we really need to dare to be different. Someone very smart came up with the concept of smart specialization strategies a lot of years ago, and I really feel that we haven't really seen the potential and realized the potential of that, because we are still in a period where all countries kind of feel they have to have everything. Instead of actually utilizing the strengths that we have across Europe. And you asked earlier about my position as coming from Denmark in terms of being one of the originals in the single market. And what we also see is, like, for instance, when we are talking about access to green energy, for instance, we are at a stage where we can have between 70 and 85% sustainable energy in the northern part of Europe, where we are lagging very much behind in other parts of Europe. That doesn't really seem like a single market to me. Like, we really need to focus on how do we use the strengths we have in some of the regions to build up in other regions, to ensure that the smart specialization areas of one region is utilized in another. I think this is one of the crucial parts that we need to focus on.
Thank you, Anne. I think that we learned a lot, both about problems, obstacles, but also about the possibility to consider that the single market means future for the European integration. And the word integration is so important. In a world of today in which fragmentation, in which lack of cooperation is becoming more and more the way of life, the relationship between among countries, among part of the world, I think we Europeans, we are working and we have to work exactly in the opposite direction. Integration has to be, I think, our mantra for the future and for the future of the single market. And when I say integration, I want to be very clear. Integration doesn't mean centralization. Integration means the way in which we have to cooperate, knowing that our European Union is a very large, wide, differentiated territory. And this is why I would like to end up this session by congratulating the European Commission for the decision to bring here in Malaga this EU Industry 23. Because Brussels is important. Brussels is the capital of the European Union, but every European city is capital of the European Union, and it is very important to consider it and to fight against an excess of bureaucratization and centralization. So thank you so much for this panel, and please join me in a great applause to our panelists. Thank you.